Last night, Tucker Carlson announced that the New York Times was working on a story that would reveal where he lived. He had recently sold his house because the far left had been harassing him. They actually showed up to his house on several occasions, and they started sending him death threats in the mail. For obvious reasons, I suppose, he decided to move, which makes a lot of sense. So I don't know if he's still living in D.C. or if he's moved somewhere else, but the New York Times is denying this. And I don't believe them. You see, we're in a culture war, that's for sure, an information war, and there is physical violence happening throughout the country in various cities, notably in Portland. But things are getting, wild out there. So when I heard that Tucker Carlson was accusing the New York Times of trying to dox him, I said, yup, what else is new? You know why? Because the New York Times just did something like this, a couple weeks ago? Because CNN threatened to dox some random dude on Reddit, and because other news outlets have published the private information of people who have no business being in public view. They do it all the time. You know why? Well, as Tucker says, to hurt us, to injure my wife. Perhaps you could argue that Tucker's being a little hyperbolic. They're not trying to injure your wife, right? No, I think the New York Times is trying to chill, to scare. And it's not just what the New York Times is doing. They're coming for Tucker. That's the easiest way to put it. You know why? Let me show you why they're coming for Tucker Carlson. Most of you already know this. Tucker Carlson tonight draws record 4.3 million viewers in second quarter amid all-time highs for Fox News Channel. Hannity as well. And guess what? They're both named in some kind of misconduct lawsuit from a former Fox employee that apparently doesn't even accuse them of doing anything wrong. Tucker and Hannity are shattering records. In quarter one, Hannity had the highest rated cable news show in history. And in quarter two, it was Tucker Carlson. Both of these individuals are pro-Trump, and they have the largest audiences in cable TV history. So are they trying to hurt Tucker Carlson? In a sense, yes. I don't really believe they're trying to physically hurt him, but I do believe they want him to fear physical violence. I think they want him to know he won't be safe, and they want him to shut up. He said something basically similar. The real goal, in my opinion, is with the smears and the attacks to discredit him, to make it so that if anyone ever points out, well, I saw on Tucker the other day, or do you watch Tucker? They're poisoning the well. That's the goal. They want to make sure that people don't watch his show. Certainly, if you heard this was the highest rated show in history, you might want to watch it, right? And what if you're talking to a friend and you're like, dude, you really got to see Tucker, watch what he talks about. They'll go, wait a minute. That guy, didn't he just lie about the New York Times and was like, because the New York Times said that's not happening. He was lying, right? Didn't he just get accused of misconduct for making suggestive, engaging in suggestive behavior and forced a woman, blah, blah, blah. You see what they're doing? I'll start slow. This is it. Tucker is too powerful. They've been trying to get Tucker off the air for a long time. They've gone after all his sponsors. And then when his main sponsor is the MyPillow guy, what do? They mock and belittle the show, saying he's just propped up by the MyPillow guy. They're trying to strip resources away from anybody who will challenge their weirdo far left BS. Let me read for you some stories. I'm going to show you the proof. I got proof that they'll dox people. There was a guy from Slate Star Codex. They were going to publish his name. He shut down his entire blog. Why? It was critical thinking. It was people posting about, it was criticism of social justice, I suppose. I don't know the entirety of what Slate Star Codex was publishing, but I know that was some of it. The New York Times said, we're going to publish your name. The dude deleted everything. I think that's a bit, pathetic. Stand by what you believe in. Don't hide. But, that's just me. Let me read you a bit of what Tucker said. Real Clear Politics posts a bit of the transcript. Tucker said, last week, the New York Times began working on a story about where my family and I live. As a matter of journalism, there is no conceivable justification for a story like that. The paper is not alleging we've done anything wrong, and we haven't. We pay our taxes. We like our neighbors. We've never had a dispute with anyone. So why is the New York Times doing a story on the location of my family's house? Well, you know why. To hurt us, to injure my wife and kids, so that I will shut up and stop disagreeing with them. Editors there know exactly what will happen to my family when it does run. I called them today, and I told them, but they didn't care. They hate my politics. They want this show off the air. If one of my children gets hurt because of a story they wrote, they won't consider it collateral damage. They know it's the whole point of the exercise, to inflict pain on our family, to terrorize us, to control what we say. This is the kind of people that they are. Tucker is not wrong. Tucker is 100% correct. This is the kind of people they are. We recently saw the resignation of Barry Weiss from the New York Times because of bullying and harassment within the company. We saw an editor be forced out of his job simply for doing his job and publishing an op-ed by a conservative, by Senator Tom Cotton. That was an egregious offense. And they all started screaming that you're making it unsafe for minority people at the New York Times, which is just absolutely absurd because someone wrote an op-ed. Take a look now. What I'm showing you here is Slate Star Codex. This is a very, very popular blog. It talked about a lot of things. I don't know too much about it. I do know that they were critical of intersectionalism. And then all of a sudden they decide to publish this guy's name. Slate Star Codex says, the New York Times is threatening my safety by revealing my real name, so I am deleting the blog. And then he says, last week I talked to the New York Times technology reporter who was planning to write a story on Slate Star Codex. He told me it would be mostly positive piece about how we were an interesting gathering place for people in tech and how we were ahead of the curve on some aspects of the coronavirus situation. It probably would have been a very nice article. Unfortunately, he told me that he discovered my real name and would reveal it in the article. Dox me. Scott Alexander is my real first and middle name, but I've tried to keep my last name a secret. I haven't always done great at this, but I've done better than have it get printed in the New York Times. I have a lot of reasons for staying pseudonymous, or however you pronounce it. First, I'm a psychiatrist, and psychiatrists are kind of obsessive about preventing their patients from knowing anything about who they are outside of work, so on and so forth. The point is, it would damage his career if his patients learned that he was taking part in this blog. You learn their opinions. They might not trust you anymore. Think about it. If you're dealing with, therapy for somebody and they hate Trump and they find out you like Trump, well, then you got a problem, right? Or in the inverse, if you hate Trump and they like Trump, you've got a problem. Not going to talk to you. That's why psychiatrists are like, we don't want to reveal too much information. But it's not just about the New York Times. Check this out. What CNN's threat to dox a Redditor tells us about the state of journalism. News organizations have become obsessed with fighting Donald Trump rather than covering him. Oh, yeah. Tucker Carlson is going to secure a large swath of votes for the president. I'd imagine that my show would do something similar, but I'm not as overt as Tucker Carlson. I mean, I don't know if he comes out. I don't think he comes out and just straight up says, vote for Trump or anything like that. But he's way more conservative than I am. Of course, anyone who is literally resisting the intersectionalist mainstream orthodoxy is a threat. You're getting an opportunity to learn. I saw an interesting post earlier on Facebook, and it was the same old thing you hear about the 1776 Independence Day, the Declaration of Independence. Why did it apply to everybody? You know why the Declaration of Independence didn't apply to everybody? Because they didn't know. For real. Someone actually replied that, saying they didn't know. That all they knew was this. This was the knowledge they had. And then this person said, well, why didn't they think harder about it? We did think harder about it. And over time, we realized what those words really meant. But it was an ideological revolution. It was planting the seeds of liberty that has since been watered a great deal. Well, now there are people who seek to chop it down and take away our liberty. But more importantly, they target Tucker Carlson. They target these Redditors. They target wrong thinkers. They target Slate Star Codex because the idea is what persists. But you need to stop the ideas from spreading. They know it, and we know it too. People have referred to intersectionalism as a mind virus, that it's something that's making people go crazy. That's what other people have said. It's an ideology that spreads like any other ideology. Many of us in America operate under the ideology that's called liberalism. I know it's almost immediately triggering to a lot of people who are like, but liberals are, I'm not talking about American colloquial liberal. I'm talking about literally classical liberalism. The ideas that were brought forth, with it was like 100 years or so or longer before the Revolutionary War. But the ideas of liberalism led to the idea of the consent of the governed. And that's all you really need to understand. I'm not saying people are liberals. I'm saying we believe that we have a right to individual liberty, life, pursuit of happiness, and that the government should be for us and by us. That's what it's really all about. They want to get rid of that. The intersectionalists want to create a new dominant ideology where everyone is segmented based on their identities and everyone bends the knee to the authority. It's an authoritarian ideology, but the problem is we have tasted liberty and we will not give it up. We understand the power of the individual and it's made this country very, very strong. It's made everybody in this country very, very wealthy. Well, if you want to have an authoritarian revolution and people know that liberty exists, you must snuff it out. And thus, they'll come for Tucker Carlson. And oh boy, is the war a-raging. Tucker Carlson claimed the New York Times planned to expose his address. Then his fans doxed the reporter. You see how they played the game? They knew what they were doing. Now, apparently, the New York Times has said that they are not planning on revealing the address of Tucker Carlson. The interesting thing is, I don't believe Tucker Carlson said that. He said, where my family lives. And that's the point. The New York Times can lay the groundwork so the far left can swoop in and do everything else. Far left journalists know, well, they're not going to be able to call up Antifa and be like, we found the town he lives in. And they also can't publish his address. But they can sprinkle a little bit of seeds and then kick the paper out to literally everybody on the planet. And then, of course, the far left will find out where he lives. Anybody could do this investigation and try to dox, Tucker Carlson. That's a fact. There's no reason to put it in the pages of the New York Times. That's something totally different. I don't see why it's newsworthy to talk about where he lives or where most people live. And Tucker pointed that out. Here's what's amazing, though. Now they're trying to flip it on him, right? When he did this segment and he said they're coming for, my family, they're now blaming his fans for going after the reporter, claiming that the New York Times is never going to reveal his information. Oh, that's weasel words. They're playing word games. They knew what they were going to do, and they were going to do it. But now apparently there is going to be there is a lawsuit against Tucker Carlson as well, and the accusation is that Tucker Carlson is making this fake claim because he's trying to divert from the actual assault scandal that is rippling through the New York Times. As far as I can tell, it's not true. We've got this story here from the Examiner. The harassment claim against Tucker Carlson doesn't even allege harassment from the Washington Examiner. And I will point out how kind of funny it is that we have a trigger warning on the lawsuit. I'm like, is that for the judge? But let me show you how the media plays defense. Brian Stelter wrote, the New York Times response, while we do not confirm what may or may publish in future editions, the Times has not and does not plan to expose any residents of Tucker Carlson, which Carlson was aware of before tonight's broadcast. The usual caveat applies here. Wait to read the story in question, then judge the decision making. Now, this is Brian Stelter's CNN newsletter. You see what he said? Tucker, sit down and shut up. If they publish the information of your family, then you're allowed to complain about it. But don't you dare try and preempt them and call them out for it. Sorry, man, if I heard that you were going to publish the location of my home, I'd speak up. Now the New York Times is coming out and saying it's not true. Well, first we got weasel words to deal with. Expose any residents. I don't believe Tucker said that. I said where my family, he said where my family lives. It's different, right? These are the games they play with semantics to make it seem like they've caught him in a lie to manipulate you. What Tucker is saying, not quite literally, is that they will release information about the location of his home. We don't know the degree to which they will reveal it. They could simply reveal the name of the town. And CNN loves dancing on this. They love, look at, they say Carlson, who spends much of the year on an island in Maine, said the NYT is working on a story about his decision to sell his DC home. He said there's no conceivable justification for the story. I'm mostly surprised to hear about the story because, well, Carlson's residences are not a secret. Carlson put up the photo of a freelance reporter in Maine who he said is writing the story for the New York Times. He accused the paper of trying to inflict pain on our family and terrorize us and control what we say. All the usual extremist talk by Carlson. He called out New York Times media editor Jim Waldoff by name. It's funny. Brian Stelter tweeted earlier that Donald Trump's decision to wear a mask, Brian Stelter tweeted out, Donald Trump's decision to wear a mask comes on failing poll numbers. A source familiar with the president's thinking says. I am not exaggerating. A source familiar with the president's thinking? Who? Is that even possible? Who's familiar with his thinking? You a mind reader? What does that even mean? You read his book? You think you know what he's thinking about? What is that? I'll tell you what. I spoke with a source familiar with Brian Stelter's thinking. And he said that every night he cries about his lack of journalistic ethics, but takes that sweet CNN cash to dry his tears, and he falls to sleep very soundly because the money was worth it. A source familiar with Brian Stelter's thinking tells me Does that make sense? That's the stupidest thing I ever heard. What we have here is CNN trying to say that because Tucker Carlson tried to defend himself, he was in the wrong. Not true. Now that the New York Times has come out and said, we're not doing it, I can actually give you I can make another assumption. If you trust Tucker Carlson that they were going to reveal this information, it stands to reason that him calling it out worked. That he went on a show and said they're trying to reveal private information about my family, so the New York Times was forced to back down. Unfortunately for him, it may protect him physically, but now they can feign ignorance and say, we were never going to do that. Tucker's exaggerating. Oh, harumph. Harumph, I say. Well, it's all on the heels of whatever this claim against Tucker Carlson is. They say, we can reserve judgment on the harassment claims that spilled out Monday night against several current and former men of Fox News. But let's quickly look at the accusation loud at Tucker Carlson and decide now that it would be shocking to find a single person who takes it seriously. I was wondering just a couple weeks ago how long it would be before Carlson got Me Too'd. Here's the answer. Kathy Aro, however you pronounce it, I have no idea, whom I've seen on TV before, but whose credentials I know nothing about, though her Twitter bio says she hosts a podcast, says in a new lawsuit that she was harassed by multiple men at Fox News, including primetime host Carlson and Sean Hannity. Aro was not an employee at Fox and was not under contract, but her lawsuit asserts that she basically functioned as one, given that she was frequently booked as a guest. How's that for a new definition of employee? The suit alleges, according to CNBC, that after December 2018 appearance on Carlson's show, while in New York, Carlson made sexual advances towards Aro. Following the show, Mr. Carlson, hardly making any effort to hide his intentions, began telling Miss Aro that he would be alone in New York City that night, and specifically said he would be staying alone in his hotel room without any wife or kids, the suit said, according to CNBC. Without question, Mr. Carlson was probing to see whether Miss Aro was interested in a relationship. Miss Aro awkwardly sidestepped Mr. Carlson's advances and declined to spend the night at his hotel. He didn't invite her. She didn't say he invited her. You see this weird, you see what they do? The suit then complained that Carlson promptly retaliated against Miss Aro, who was featured on his show only three times in 2019, has not appeared once in 2020. That's it. That's the harassment. Okay. I'm sorry. I have to do this. I have to assert harassment by Tucker Carlson against me. You see, I had appeared on his show, I believe one time, and in another episode, he said something about me. He said, I think Tim Pool is a leftist, but an honest one. Good for him. Good for me? What is that supposed to mean? And all of a sudden, Tucker won't invite me on his show anymore? I'm being harassed. How stupid. This is the stupidest thing I've ever heard. Carlson, according to Aro's own account, said nothing about sex, but in her mind, she believed he was inviting her to his room, or perhaps not even that. He was probing to see if she was interested in a relationship, all while not even mentioning one. And the consequence of the alleged encounter with Carlson is that her invitations to appear on his show on a network she was never employed by dried up. Why won't Tucker have me on his show anymore? I've only been on one time. I've been on Fox several times, but it's not fair. I'm clearly being harassed by Tucker. He called me a leftist. I don't know if I'm a leftist. Maybe, I don't know, whatever. I understand that in this scenario, Aro may be upset that she no longer had a platform to hawk her podcast and build up a recognition. But where did the harassment come in? There's no claim that Carlson touched her. He didn't even talk about sex, according to her own account. There wasn't even an explicit invite to spend time with him. And that's assuming her version is true. And not only that, harassment is repeated. Tucker would have to do something like, hey, I got an empty hotel. You know what I'm saying? And then when she was like, no, I don't, and I'm not interested. And then the next day he goes, hey, that hotel's still there. And then she would say, stop asking me about your hotel room. And then if he said, no, I want you in my hotel, you are being harassed. You can't just have someone walk up to you and be like, hey, I'm going to be at the Waldorf. I'm staying up there by myself because my family's out of town. I don't know if you wanted to grab a drink or something. And when they say no, be like, no problemo. This is the problem with these harassment claims. Let me tell you, what would happen if this was a dude? What would happen if it were me? And I'm on Fox News and I'm sitting there going like, Tucker, here's the thing about Antifa. Actually, they're a far left group. And then afterwards, Tucker goes, So I'm actually staying in New York for the night. Family and everybody's down in D.C., so I'm just going to be chilling. I don't know if you want to hang out, grab a drink or whatever, maybe hit the bar and we'll talk politics or something. I'd be like, yeah, sounds great. I do it all the time with people. We have business meetings. We talk politics. I sit down and I talk with people. We grab a bite to eat. It's what normal human beings do. Why would I assume, what am I going to come out then and be like, Tucker was making advances on me because he wanted to grab a drink? This is the big problem that we face as right now if we can't get over this stuff. I've talked about it before when it pertains to harassment in the workplace. Let me give you a scenario because I love this concept and people need to hear it. If a man walks into Tucker Carlson's office and he's wearing a new suit with a new haircut and he's looking a little slim, maybe he looks like he's been working out, and Tucker goes, "Whoa, man, you're looking good. Have you been working out? It's a killer outfit." And he walks over, pats him on the shoulder and says, "Welcome back to the, to the studio. You've been gone for a bit. You're looking great, man." Nobody would care. Now, you get it. Imagine if it was a woman who walked in and Tucker got up and went, "Whoa, looking great. That's an amazing outfit." Walked over, patted the woman on the shoulder and said, "Have you been working out?" She'd be like, "Oh, how dare you?" Like this. Tucker saying, "I'm staying at a hotel by myself." And she says, "Help, help, I'm being harassed." There you go, man. Listen, Tucker, they're coming for you, but you knew this. It's not just going to be about your address. They're going to try and do everything they can. They're already targeting his staff. I don't know if you've heard the controversy over one of his writers posting stupid things on the internet, whatever. I don't know. They're going to do everything in their power to shut him down. But more importantly, if all they get away with is poisoning the well, they will be happy about it. Make sure that if anyone ever says you should watch Tucker, they go, "Oh, that weird harasser guy? No way." That's the story. They're tainting the legacy. They're tainting the image. They are poisoning the well because they don't want you to watch Tucker Carlson. Why? There's a reason why he has the highest rated cable news show in history. Yep. They're coming for him. And everybody else too. Anybody who dare oppose their stupid fringe cult, but I'll leave it there. Next segment's coming up at 1 p.m. on this channel, and I will see you all then.